You're on mute, Monsi.
Hello, guys. We are live and we have Dr. Jerika Dodd, who is someone, honestly, that doesn't need introduction. And that's what success means in my eyes. She's a pharmacist coach, an executive director of Pharmacist Magazine. She is also teaching pharmacists how to bring out their why and how to market themselves, which is something that we all need to learn. It is phenomenal to have someone that is, I would say, multi-talented and using, not getting boxed up and using all those talents and years of experience to help this amazing community of pharmacists, because we are, she says, as she says, we are brilliantly insecure and we need coaches like you, Jerika. We need you, right? And the pharmacist work that you have done in the last, I would say, 4 years, right? And made it through COVID. It was not easy in those times. And I applaud you for honestly all the work you've done. And it is an honor to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Mansi and Dr. Whitney. Thank you both for having me. I never discounted when someone asks me or invites me to their platform. So thank you.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you. So why don't I go ahead and throw the first question out? So kind of tell us your origin story. How did you become Jerika Dodd?
I became Jerika Dodd way before pharmacy school, definitely. I think oftentimes we tend to tell our story based upon our pharmacy story. And so you see me do the air quotes because that's not my story. My story is that for the first 40 years of my life, I thought that my job was to make everyone else's wants, wishes, dreams, and desires come true. I thought that that was my role on the earth. And so in doing that in my adult life, I spent a period of 13 years where I had these physical health symptoms that if you've ever been to the fair and you play that whack-a-mole game where you have the mallet and they pop up out of the hole and that's how I was handling my health. So one symptom would pop up and I would knock it down with a Band-Aid, and another one and I would knock that one down. So I never won that big teddy bear though. So nonetheless, I was playing whack-a-mole with my health because really what my focus was running around making sure everybody else was happy. And even being a healthcare practitioner, I did not realize that I was on my way to being paralyzed. And so it wasn't until I sat before the neurosurgeon, and you know, and I know that when you go see the neurosurgeon, he's not playing patty cake. He's talking about, he or she is talking about doing surgery. And so it wasn't until I was faced with having to have brain surgery that it was like the brakes went on. And I realized for the first time in my life that I had never prioritized myself. I had never been more important than all of the things that I was doing to make everybody else happy and keep harmony in life. And so I tell people that my story is not that I had brain surgery. I hope you never have to have it. I hope it never, happens for you. But that's not my story. My story is that I almost didn't have surgery. That's the story. And so once I realized that I needed to prioritize myself, despite all the needs that I perceived to be around me, that's when my life began to change. And I feel like I really started living and loving my life and what I do. And so as a result, I created a consulting practice. I started coaching women in pharmacy, and I created a platform called Pharmacist Magazine to celebrate women in pharmacy. And none of that likely would have happened if I hadn't had that wake-up call that I needed to prioritize myself.
Absolutely.
So that was would you say that was the turning point where you could gather all the strength you needed? Because I feel that we have it in us, pharmacists, but we kind of fear gathering the strength and we wait till we get tipped over we get knocked down to the point where we're not able to get up, and then we start gathering strength, and that's not a good position, right? So from this experience, I feel like others should learn to prepare ahead of time. Would you say that, Jericka?
Yes, because I know you and I have talked, and from the moment we met, we could see the similarities in our stories. And so when I think back over my life, because you heard me say for the first 40 years, so it's a little bit of time there, that I can see events that happen along the way in life that were probably those warning signs, those signals, including a failed marriage, that I couldn't grasp what they meant in my life at that time. What was that a sign of? What was that a symbol of? What was that a symptom of? But when I got to that point of faced with having to make a decision of brain surgery or not, and despite all the people that truly needed me, and then those that I perceived just couldn't make it unless I was there doing what I normally did, that was like the crisis, if you will, that made me stand back and go, wait a minute, there's got to be a different way to do this thing. And the fact that I'm a pharmacist, I think that, you know, the circumstances could have been what they would have been in any profession. However, it made me rethink what I do. It made me rethink how I do it. It made me rethink who was I, not only as a pharmacist, but just who was I as a woman walking this earth? What was I put here to do? Why am I here? Who are the people that I'm supposed to be reaching? Yes, I have a great job. Yes, I'm in a great position. Yes, I've achieved a lot, but it was more like checking the box achievement,
Yes.
Not like truly life-loving achievement, happiness, joy even. It wasn't like that until I prioritized myself.
So would you say once you became your own first patient or your own first client, in a sense, that transformed how you coach, how you consult, how you are as a healthcare professional? How did that translate, being you did all these great things as a healthcare professional before you really became your own first client? And then how did that transition after you actually, you know, just reevaluated yourself and realized, hey, you know, there's a lot of validity in self-care, in self-worth, in self-awareness?
Yes, it probably was the best that I was my own first patient, both as a patient in the true sense of the word, as well as client in coaching. Because when I think of the number of patients that I've served in my consulting practice, who have come to me saying, I got to do something because my doctor is going to put me on insulin if I don't make a change. And then they're definitely highly motivated. And then I go, okay, are you going to listen to what I tell you to do? And even now, still a patient, walking through my own health journey makes it so real that I can help patients, not only from the perspective that I think we often take, which is to talk at them, but because I'm also a patient, I can say, I understand. These are the challenges that I have. I'm actually diabetic myself. And when I tell you that I understand why you just can't talk at patients and say, don't eat that, don't eat the wrong thing, eat the right thing. Like if it were that simple, then no one would be diabetic. And so even having that experience, because I'm on a mission to reverse it, and because it could definitely be done, but it helps me coach patients with a whole different perspective. And not saying that I think all pharmacists should become whatever therapeutic area that they are treating. You shouldn't become a patient of that so that you can coach better. But every experience that I've had has been able to help me show up and give even more of myself to that patient, as well as on the coaching side. I do not buy, as you can probably tell, just in our warm up this morning, you can imagine that my clients, I don't buy most of the excuses that they want to tell themselves, because our brains are wired to keep us comfortable. So we spend most of our lives trying to make sure that we're comfortable, as snug as a bug in a rug. And I am the coach that's going to let you get all snuggled up, and then I'm going to pull that blanket and say, all right, let's go. And so many of them don't like necessarily what I'm saying in the moment, but later will come back and say, that was what I needed.
I just kind of want to point out one point here. You really drive home the point of it's one thing to sympathize with someone, right? But then it's another thing to empathize. But then there's another thing to have compassion, to really be able to see something in a different perspective than a narrow perspective, or the perspective before you went through some sort of experience. Wouldn't you say that the same, Dr. Monsi?
Absolutely. And that's what makes you stand out, Jericka, as a coach, as a doctor, as a person, because there's so many amazing qualities that is not to be taught. It's just there, and you fine tune the skills and you brought them to the level where you could help others, because helping others in a way where the change is coming is an art. And I'll be very honest, Jericka, I have close friends who are your students, and basically they are, very, very grateful of being with you in your coaching academy. So that's what I would say for Jericka's coaching.
Well, thank you. You're never quite sure what impact you're making when you're doing it. There are many, many nights when I may be sitting right where I'm sitting now, and I do this because you wonder, did I make it through to that person? Do they really believe in themselves, or what have you? And so you wonder if you're making an impact. And I tell people that if you are not, coaching is not for the faint at heart. And if you are not willing to pour and give more of yourself than you ever imagined, then, because this is not about collecting dollars, it's not about ringing up sales. It is truly being in the business of helping people change their lives. And when I hear my coaching clients say, my husband says he sees a difference in me. Like those are those benefits that I could never put a price tag on. When my coaching clients tell me in the beginning, oh, no, I'm not doing that social media thing. And I go, okay. And then a month later, they are killing it in the game. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed by the number of responses that I'm having to respond to. That is like, that's when you know that you're making an impact and that people's lives are being changed. And it's a different thing to be in the business of helping people change their lives. That's a whole different, because pharmacists look for tools, tips, tactics, strategies, formulas, algorithms, hints, secrets, whatever. Because if I could just get that one thing, then I'll know how to do it. So that's why you see a lot of pharmacists who will watch what you're doing, and then they will go and try to recreate it. And you just shake your head, because that's not where it is. That's not what it is. Sure, you could make your post look exactly like this, but that's not where it is.
It's not authentic.
No, it's not. But when you get in the business of helping, which most pharmacists at heart are helping people change their lives, it takes on a different meaning when you wake up and know that you have your hand on a certain number of people. And it's not only impacting them, but it's impacting their spouse, it's impacting their children, it's impacting their community. That's the way that I look at what I do, and that it actually has eternal importance.
So we talk about a lot of great things. So what would you say is the biggest motivating factor for you, whether it was your journey, maybe family? Please shine light on that.
Dr. Brittany, my family, and I'm very candid, they probably are still trying to figure out where I lost my mind. And they were like, because that's not what pharmacists do.
I can relate, trust me.
Yeah. And so if you can imagine, I've made some of the biggest decisions in these last 4 years that, number one, I surprise myself when I think about, because that's not the old Jericka. The first decision that I had to make, and all of these have been very difficult decisions, but the first decision that I had to make was to leave my church. And I was on the leadership staff as one of the ministers. And so that was very difficult, because I don't just up and leave things, if you will. The second decision that I made about 8 months later was to leave my job in the pharmaceutical industry. That was the industry, the only industry that I really knew, 17 years of experience. And 8 months after I left my church, I left my job, and I didn't have it all figured out. That's another thing that as pharmacy professionals, we want to know the beginning, the end from the beginning. You don't always get to have it figured out. And so literally these 4 years that Dr. Mancy has talked about, you've seen me putting one foot in front of the other. And if you had called me on any one of those days, even today, I would say, you know what, I can't see the next 50 steps necessarily, but I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And so what happens is you turn around and you look and go, okay, those were the right decisions to make. And then the second decision was to leave my job. The third decision, oh my gosh, now Dr. Brittany, this made them have to they were like, we don't know what to do with her. When I said, I'm going to leave the home that I've lived in for 18 years. I don't want any of it. And I moved across the country to a city that I love. I'm now living in the third city that I love. I made a list in 2019. I made a list of cities that I love in the United States, and I am now sitting, looking outside at the sun. So you see me look over, that's the sun over there. I am living in the third city that I made a list about in 2019. Like that. So that's why you hear me say your dreams are urgent. And that probably sounds very flighty, very lofty, very not very scientific. I'm just as analytical as all of us. However, I've gotten to the point in my life that I understand that my dreams are urgent, because it wasn't until I started living my dreams that all the things that I thought I was supposed to be didn't matter anymore. You heard me talk about all the titles that I do have. People look at my resume and they're like, wow, but that doesn't matter. What matters is my heart is only, as a good friend of mine, Dr. Vicky says, your heart is only going to beat a finite number of times. I don't have heartbeats to waste on trying to impress anybody with any credentials behind my name. I don't have time to waste with looking at what the next person is doing on social media. I am running my own race, because one day this heart isn't going to beat anymore. And I don't want to look back and have wasted, well, I won't be looking back, but I don't want anybody else to look back and think, well, she sure did waste a lot of heartbeats on this, that, and the other. So that's why I got to the point of making huge moves in my life, moves that terrified me. You know how terrifying it is to leave your church? Do you know how terrifying it is to leave your job? Do you know how terrifying it is to leave your hometown, where and move across the country?
I think all three of us on this call have been down those journeys.
Yeah. And
I got goosebumps, Jerica. This is so powerful. You refuse to stay in comfort zones, and you are a living example of what you're coaching your students, because there's no way they can ever say that you're not preaching what you're, like you're not doing what you're preaching, right?
And that's on purpose, because I have to give you the guarantee, number one, that you have to be able to see it first. We need to see stuff. You have to prove it to us. We want that theory to be proven before we take the first step. So I tell my clients, I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself or that I'm not willing to do. So everything that I ask them to do, when they say, oh, well, I've never done that before, that's okay. I've done it and you're going to be just fine. And so when I tell you that, but when you start building that momentum that, you've made enough people look at you the wrong way, the right way, the whatever sideways way, then you keep jumping. Therein lies the joy, in the process and in the journey, not in the destination. I keep jumping. It's like, okay, what are we going to do next? And that becomes the thrill, if you will, of life, that you're jumping and you're building that next big thing. You're going to that next big destination, if you will. But once you get to that destination, you'll see it quickly fades and you're like, okay, what's next?
Absolutely. So that brings me to the question of pharmacists. What's next for pharmacists, and what's next for women in pharmacy, and now coming to men in pharmacy that pharmacists is supporting. So I want to know more, and then I have a quick testimonial about pharmacists that I want to share. and that you don't even know yet. So you're in for a surprise, but yeah, let's hear your thoughts and then I'll share what I have to say.
So, Pharmacist magazine, I must tell you, is a result of being in a place where you can literally, you can dream. If you had asked me when I was making those first two decisions and said, and oh, so by the way, are you going to have a magazine? I would be like, no way. That was the furthest thing from my mind, much less coaching anybody, because I was trying to figure it out myself. But when I tell you, when you put yourself in a place where you're able to dream, you'll be amazed at what you can come up with. It allows you freedom and space to be able to say, you know, I wonder what will happen if I put this in the world. And so I remember being in the first city that I love in this country, Portland, Oregon. Don't call me weird. Nonetheless, I was in the park in downtown Portland, Oregon in the middle of the day. And I made a phone call and said, do you think you can connect me with someone who can help me publish a magazine? I know nothing about publishing a magazine. I just want to publish a magazine. And so then I got connected to my magazine designer, and we've been like this ever since, because she's the one that took what I had here and in my heart, and she translated that to what you see online and what you see on the pages. And it was like, oh my gosh, she gets me. Like, she took what I said and made and made it happen. And you know, I think that then I just wanted to create a platform where women in pharmacy could tell their story, not their pharmacy story, but they could tell their story. And so that's all I was out to do. And then the next thing I know, a year has passed. This is the first year anniversary issue. I keep them close. I'm looking for yours, Nancy. I keep them close. They're all right here. Nonetheless, a year has passed. And then the next thing you know, 2 years has passed. You know, that first year in 2019, we did one magazine. That second year, we did 2 magazines because we were definitely deep in pandemic land. And then the third year, we did 3 magazines. And really, we're in our 4th year, but getting ready to celebrate the 3rd anniversary. And so when I tell you that in this year, we've gone from 3 to we're doing 7 this year. And so like I never, like, this was never my plan.
That is crazy.
Which is why I say I keep you close.
Yes, I was a part of the second year, the 2020.
2021.
Yeah.
Yes, and so Dr. Mancy was on our pages, and oftentimes your ears should burn, because when I'm talking, that's why the magazines are closed, because when I'm talking to women about upcoming features in the magazine, I pull up whoever comes to mind for whatever example I'm trying to give. And so that's why I knew if I just did this, I would get it really quickly. Nonetheless, I never saw those things happening. But once they start happening, then you keep dreaming and you keep dreaming. And then it's like, you know what? I want to celebrate these women, not for all their accomplishments. Yeah, we'll list all that, but that's not why I'm celebrating you, because you deserve to be celebrated, because you are on this earth. That's like, just because for being you, not because of all the degrees, all the credentials, just because you're an amazing, pharmacists are brilliant. And I know I'm biased. However, like, that deserves to be celebrated, especially in a profession that, in my personal opinion, doesn't do enough celebrating the people. I mean, yeah, we celebrate those who interact with patients, but there are people who are doing, everyone needs a pharmacist. You know, my shirts say that, right? So then it was like, well, I never wanted to leave out the guys. And so I had this idea of PharmaSir back in 2020, but it took a moment because it's a different magazine than Pharmacists. And now getting ready to go to other countries, like, that's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
I want to show the world.
Again, a goosebump moment here.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about, Jerrica, reinventing yourself again and again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's my quick testimonial on Pharmacists. That's my little sharing where people should understand the importance of this magazine. I didn't know, what would come out of it. I went ahead and, of course, as an entrepreneur, I wanted to be seen. I wanted to support another business owner. It was just a mutual thing I wanted to do, but it's a win-win. Then, about a year and a half ago, someone reached out to me saying, "Hey, I saw you on Jerrica's magazine, and I would like to hire you for a job for Abbott to speak on gut health." And that 45-minute webinar paid me a pretty handsome amount for that feature. Like, people don't, like, it might not come right away, but people are noticing, they're seeing, they're, of course, like, they are gauging you as a person. And then when an opportunity comes, you have made that impression in their mind because they've seen you in multiple places doing the things you're doing and your offerings.
Let me tell you,
Isn't that powerful?
This magazine, which is the one that you were in, this was summer 2021. I have heard some of the most amazing stories from this issue.
Isn't that crazy?
You just shared that one. I will tell you, someone took this magazine, the physical magazine, and put it in the hands of someone else who happened to be a pharmacist. And that person got the magazine, read the magazine, was like, "This is nice." That person called me this year. That person watched me online for a whole year, never interacted, never liked a post, never engaged on a post, never commented, but they just watched me for an entire year. I didn't know I was on stage. And then I get a message in my LinkedIn box that says, I want to hire you I want to be your coaching client. And literally when I got on the phone, that client was like, "Okay, where do I pay?" And I was like, "Well, wait, like, we should have a discovery call. Like, we should talk." And they were like, "Okay."
They already know you. They
Right.
know what they can get from you. They know
From this magazine, this one.
Wow.
I
It's
hear
so
stories.
powerful. It's
Yeah.
I think people don't understand the magnitude of like what can come out of these things. So I highly recommend. I was in fact thinking I should buy like 4 or 5 features for my future with the magazine, because look what happened. I'm just reinvesting what I made, right? So, I mean,
And all this is to reiterate, there's so much power in visibility, not just the credibility with our credentials and our resume and our CV. The visibility is so key too. Awesome stuff.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because we are credible, right? We already have the degree. Anyone can go on the state website and check for our license with our name. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. But when it comes to visibility, you cannot be the best kept secret in the world and then expect that, oh, just because you're in business, now a lot of people will just come to you. They don't know you. They don't know how you're going to help them. And this magazine brings that out for you.
Well, and so Dr. Brittany, I'll give you this open invitation so the whole audience can hear it. I'm waiting on you.
McCoy.
I think her video.
Oh, her thing froze. Yeah. So she did tell me that she's gonna be a part of the magazine soon, because it's totally worth it. I mean, for me, even though I hadn't gotten that opportunity, for me, it's totally worth it because of the mixers that we do. And I love it. It's so much fun. Like, I couldn't attend a couple of the last 2 ones and it didn't feel good. I was like, oh my God, I'm missing out because I had other commitments that I was doing. But just saying, like, I feel that everybody should, like pharmacists, we need to be a huge part of this community. This is a safe place that you've created for us to be vulnerable, to share our stories, be authentic, and we're all the same credentials. Doesn't matter, like, right? Like, in a playing field, we're like really equal at this point. We're just learning from each other and growing. So McCoy, your screen froze, but Jerrica said, "This is an open invitation. When are you coming on with Pharmacist Magazine?"
Oh, little does she know, I've been following her for years too. I actually engage in her posts and like and comment, and I support all of what pharmacists do in general. So it's definitely coming. I definitely understand the power of visibility, of PR, of being in some of these opportunities that allow you to put yourself out there and brand yourself and to show who you are and tell your story. So even I was sharing with you before the call, I did a keynote speaking opportunity in Arizona, but that came from me being a part of a book that earned me the title of a #1 international best-selling author. But that came from me investing in myself, wanting to be visible, taking the time to share what I have to offer.
And, the additional piece of that is relationship. Relationship. Every woman that I've interviewed who has been a part of the magazine, I would say very, very few that I'm not in contact with in some way or another, but it brings relationship. I don't talk to Dr. Mancy every day. We rarely talk, but she knows that if she sends me something and says, hey, I need you to do this, I'm like, okay. And if I send her something, she's going to say, okay, because we had an impactful enough conversation. We've transacted business together. And I know that this might sound a little whatever. However, can you just imagine, like, I know that we've interviewed over 60 women, either features, authors, advertisers, what have you. They're well over 60 women. Can you imagine if these women did business with each other? And I'm not saying that someone else doesn't have a good business or what have you, but do you understand the power? First of all, do you understand the power in marketing that we have, which is, one of my my goals of the women in the magazine is to understand that it's really not only about yourself being presented or marketed to the world, but helping the woman next to you, the woman whose picture goes up the day before you, the woman whose picture goes up the day before after you. So you hear people say they broke the internet. Like, we have that type of capability. When we celebrate each other, when we cheer for each other, it does not take anything away from me to cheer for either of you or for any woman for that matter. And so when you realize the amount of power that you have to do things like propel and support each other, when you realize the amount of economic power you have to do business with each other, to refer each other, then you see that this is not just about pretty faces. Yes, we do have beautiful faces, but it's more, and do you see the brilliance? The brilliance
Oh
that
yeah.
we have. And so those are the things that when I tell you, I have to remind myself, because there's a cover picture going up today. I have to remind myself, because there are sometimes when I get in my analytical brain and I'm like, oh, they don't want to see another cover. They don't want to see another picture of me. But I have to remind myself, number one, who I am and the mission that I'm on. And it doesn't matter who disagrees with the mission, who doesn't understand the mission, who doesn't like the mission, who doesn't support the mission. I'm going to support the mission, because as I mentioned in another post, it wasn't a conference call on a party line when I got the assignment. So I don't expect everyone to like it, love it, what have you. I don't expect everyone's support. We talked about that even a little bit earlier. So with that, I think that when you get women and men in pharmacy to understand the reach and the impact that we have, and as I believe in the words of Zig Ziglar, if you help enough people get where they want to go, you'll definitely get where you want to go. That is part of what's behind Pharmacist Magazine, in addition to a place where you can share your story.
I think that's absolutely amazing. Well, with that being said, please share how the audience can get in touch with you, your social media, your website.
So the best way to get in touch with me, because it is my platform of choice for my business, is LinkedIn. I am there on as Dr. Jericka Dodd. Pharmacist Magazine has a page there. So any way you can get on LinkedIn, either directly to me as a direct message or sending a message through the Pharmacist Magazine page, by all means, I am the quickest to respond to LinkedIn. And so many times people send me messages and they tell me all their degrees and all their accomplishments, and they just have no idea that when we get on the phone, we're not going to talk about most of that. I want to know who you are. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know like what it is that you're showing up in the world to offer. And we are not showing up in the world to offer our degrees and all of our long history of achievements and accomplishments. We're showing up to offer our brilliance, our passion, our compassion, as you said earlier. That's what we're showing up to offer.
Absolutely. It's been such an honor to have you, and so much wisdom. Like, you must be an old soul because you've lived many lives, is what it feels like. There's so much to learn from you. And of course, you have learned a lot from your journey and your experiences, but the whole point that you have kept, going and going, and so much strength. Like, it's been a tough road, but you have not once said that, okay, I give up, or even thought that way. So we applaud you.
I've thought it.
Well, but then doing it, thought about it, but then doing it. Like, when it comes to doing it,
Right.
you will not get to that point because you've been broken down many times with your health. Like, I know your health journey. In fact, when we talked, you were not healthy at that time, and still you were running the show. You know how much strength that takes? That's like Michael Jordan when he had that game, when he had fever, and he still went to the game and really did well. That's what it is. That's what it is. We're all, sports people in that spirit when we are running our business. So this show is about you and how we can give strength to other entrepreneurs, because
resilience.
Yes, there is no other
Resilience
than that.
I have met the most amazing people on this journey, and they're people that I likely would not have met if I hadn't taken the journey. And so I don't regret any part of it. I'm grateful for the challenging parts of it, because they definitely teach you to be grateful for the not so challenging parts. But I'm also grateful for those parts because that's where I think I've learned the most. When you're like, oh, okay, that didn't work. All right, now how do we do this and do it again? And so it's been an amazing journey. I would never, ever, ever mislead anyone to say it's all been pushing that easy button, because there is no easy button except at the office supply store. So yes, but I wouldn't trade it. I would not trade it at all.
When you look back, you feel like, wow, what a journey. And you're just going, further and further, and all the challenges are at ease now. There's a lot more, right? Like, I think it's for all entrepreneurs. The first 2 years are very difficult.
Yes, I would even venture to say maybe the first 3 to 5, because number one, you're having to reprogram your mindset from being an employee and operating and building someone else's dream. I have a couple of clients that have reached that point where they're kind of like, okay, what am I doing? Because you're so used to someone else giving you the agenda and saying, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And you follow along and you do what you're told. However, when it's yours, you have to be the one that says, okay, this is how I want to see it done. This is what I want the outcome to be. This is what it's going to take to make it happen. And so some people just go, I'm lost, because no one is telling you what to do to build their dream. So yes, I think it takes some time to steady yourself, and then you're going to have those ups and downs, because if you just launch into something and it's just an easy road, then I'm a little skeptical of that, because that's just not how life works.
Yeah, what do you have to say about those who make it look easy, and they say that, wow, I just launched last year and now I'm making multiple 6 figures? I want to know your thoughts on those.
You know what? We might need to stop it and start a whole new show.
I think we need to bring you back on that topic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
Volume 2 coming soon.
I don't care what social media makes it look like. This is a professional picture with makeup, hair, and the actual photography. But I am always so grateful when I get to actually meet people so that they can make an association that this lady has hard days, has tough days. This lady cries sometimes. This lady says, there's not enough to do all the things that need to be done or that I want to be done. I think that it's unfair to give people an unrealistic expectation. And I think it's also
in a way unethical too.
Yes, unethical, unfair, unreasonable. I think that it's so important because at the end of the day, what did I talk about? I have my hands on people's lives. So I'm not going to say how much I'm raking in, because first of all, I'm not raking in. Like I'm in a different business. I'm in the business of helping people change their lives. And that can be messy. It can take a long time. You don't know how many people call me on the back end after they go through some of these programs and go, I paid all this and I paid all that, but I still don't
have anything to show for.
And you know why? Because as long as you have people in the equation, people are not robots. People, every one of my coaching clients, number one, is building a different business. Every one of them has a different personality. And so in order for me to understand what this one needs, what that one needs, I have to spend time with them to understand that I can say one thing to one client that I wouldn't dare say to another, because I understand how far I can push with each one. I understand their backstory. I understand their insecurities or their fears that they've at least shared with me. I understand that one of them says to me all the time, and she can't hear. One of them says to me all the time, I imagine your face, because I have to type every communication. She says, sends me a message back and says, I can imagine your face when you said that, because that's how we have to that's the level that we operate on. It's not me saying, here, go watch the video and call me tomorrow. You've got to understand and connect with people, and not in a cookie cutter approach. Yes, they all end up learning pretty much the same thing, but they understand how it applies to them and their circumstance. It's not like just a cookbook that if you put in all these particular measurements and ingredients, you'll come out with the same cake as the person next to you baking the same cake. That's not how this business works. And so I don't know who we're talking about, but I'm in a different business.
Well, we all know there's a lot of programs out there now, and a lot of people do come to me and McCoy too, just like you, and they're very upset, and it just hurts our heart. So that's why we want to show them that there is not a cookie cutter approach. There is an individualized approach that we offer, right? And like, you have been a phenomenal coach to all these people that I talk to, and they have such amazing things to say about you. And
I hope so.
Yeah, on your back, they do talk a lot of good stuff. So like, that's the power. And I feel that it's not about how much money the coach is making. It's about how many lives we've changed and how much impact we have made. And I think that's what a coach should really focus on. And I'm so happy that we get to hear, talk to you. 15 minutes of your time is valuable. Absolutely an honor for me and McCoy to have you here. And we'll bring you back sometime and we'll talk more about, the profession, because this was more about you. So we'll continue our conversations and talk more about different things. So absolutely honor. Guys, go check out Pharmacist. Absolutely an amazing magazine. Subscribe for it, or get a feature in it, and then you get subscription for free. So you don't have to subscribe separately, and you get to be a part of the mixer for that season also for free. So there's a lot of perks, and then you get a lot of visibility. And of course, out of that comes a lot of business, because credits, you already have that. We all went to school. So absolutely honor. McCoy, closing thoughts for Jericka?
Yeah, impact over income. Let's do it. If you guys didn't have it before, you guys should have it now. Let's do it. Awesome stuff. You guys have a powerful week. Thank you so much, Dr. Dodd. It was a pleasure having you on here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.